Have you ever watched an 80s sci-fi film and wondered how anyone got away with making something that wild? The decade was filled with practical effects, creature experiments, and directors who pushed imagination past its limits. In the middle of all that chaos, some films went further than the rest. They were strange, bold, and unforgettable. And one of them hides a moment so unbelievable that you might pause the screen just to ask yourself what you're even looking at. Number 12. XTRO from 1982. XTRO doesn't open gently. It jumps right into the unusual, and it never stops trying to unsettle you. Made in Britain during the early 80s, this film takes a familiar idea from science fiction and twists it into something dreamlike and unpredictable. A man disappears in a bright flash. Years later, he returns, but not the way anyone expects. From the very first moments, you understand this is not a calm family story. It is a mystery wrapped in strange visuals and practical effects that feel handmade but purposeful. What makes XTRO extreme is not noise or chaos, but the tone. Everything looks slightly off. Rooms feel too quiet. Faces linger for a second too long. Shadows move in ways you don't expect. The film constantly hints that the returning man is connected to something beyond human understanding, and the events around him grow more unusual each minute. A toy soldier marching on its own. A clown that should not be alive. A transformation scene that still shocks viewers today even without using modern effects. XTRO became a cult favorite because it never tries to fit into a neat box. It is part sci-fi, part surreal fantasy, and part dark family drama. The ending leaves first-time viewers confused in the best way, wondering how a film this small and strange managed to feel so big and deeply unsettling. It's not just extreme for its era. It's extreme because no other movie feels quite like it. Number 11. Riki. Oh, the story of Riki from 1989. This is the moment when sci-fi, martial arts, and pure 80s boldness all collide. Riki-Oh is set in a future where everything looks exaggerated on purpose. Buildings feel oversized, the costumes are loud, and the tone blends action with high-energy visual style. At its center is Riki, a young man with remarkable strength, who ends up in a futuristic correction facility that looks more like a comic book battleground than anything grounded in reality. What pushes this movie into the extreme category is how unapologetically stylized it is. Every movement feels like it is meant to be paused and studied. Practical effects, though simple by modern standards, are used in ways that make scenes unforgettable. Characters leap with impossible height, walls crumble with minimal effort, and each confrontation is designed for maximum impact without crossing into unsafe or adult territory. The energy remains high from the first minute to the last. The film draws inspiration from its original comic source, which explains the heightened expressions, dramatic reactions, and over-the-top moments. Nothing feels quiet or subtle here. It's bold, loud, and proudly unrealistic. And that is exactly why it became a cult phenomenon worldwide, especially after it reached home video audiences. If you want a sci-fi film from the 80s that embraces pure excess without fear, Riki-Oh stands at the top of the list. It is wild, imaginative, and so committed to its tone that you can see us help but enjoy the ride. Number 10. Tetsuo, the Iron Man from 1989. Few films from the 80s feel as intense, artistic, and truly experimental as Tetsuo, the Iron Man. Shot in stark black and white, this Japanese sci-fi nightmare looks more like a moving graphic novel than a traditional movie. It follows a man who slowly begins transforming as metal appears from within his body, turning every step of his journey into a symbolic collision between technology and humanity. The film's style is its power. Fast cuts, extreme close-ups, stop-motion sequences, and a non-stop industrial soundtrack combine to create a viewing experience that feels more physical than visual. You don't just watch Tetsuo, you feel it. The director, Shinya Tsukamoto, made the movie with a small budget, a small crew, and a fierce creative vision. Every frame feels intentional and raw, as if the world is being pulled apart and rebuilt through scrap metal. Tetsuo became extreme without depending on anything unsafe or graphic. The extremity comes from emotion, rhythm, and the unsettling way machinery gradually overtakes the human body. The main character's struggle is not shown through loud dialogue, but through surreal imagery that leaves the viewer questioning what is real and what is metaphor. This film influenced decades of cyberpunk storytelling, inspiring later works in animation, live action, and even video games. Its legacy proves that you don't need glossy effects to push boundaries. You just need imagination, atmosphere, and the courage to make something completely unique. Tetsuo is exactly that kind of film. Number 9. Altered States from 1980. Altered States is one of the most ambitious sci-fi experiments of the early 80s. Directed by Ken Russell and based on a novel by Paddy Chayefsky, the film follows scientist Eddie Jessup, a man who becomes obsessed with understanding the deepest layers of human consciousness. To do that, he enters sensory chambers and uses advanced research techniques that send him into visions no one could predict. The film builds its tension through psychological imagery rather than physical danger. Jessup's explorations begin academically, but each session grows stranger. He experiences vivid dreams, shifting landscapes, and ancient memories that appear and vanish in seconds. The scenes are filled with swirling colors, abstract figures, and effects that still amaze viewers today. It's not extreme because of content, but because of imagination. The images feel powerful, fast, and unfiltered. What truly sets this movie apart is how seriously it treats the concept of inner transformation. The line between what Jessup sees and what actually changes in the world around him becomes thinner every moment. The audience starts to wonder whether they are watching hallucinations or real events. That uncertainty is the heart of the film. Altered States earned a reputation for being one of the boldest science fiction films of its time. It blended philosophy, experimental visuals, and human emotion into a story that asks big questions without handing out easy answers. For viewers who love sci-fi that challenges the mind as much as it entertains, this one stands tall. Number 8. Scanners from 1981. When people talk about unforgettable practical effects, Scanners always comes up first. Directed by David Cronenberg, the film explores the idea of individuals with rare mental abilities who can influence thoughts, emotions, and even physical reactions. The concept alone is strong, but what made Scanners a sensation was the way it visualized those abilities. Every moment feels charged with tension, as if something intense might happen at any second. The story follows Cameron Vale, a man who learns he is a scanner and is drawn into a conflict involving others like him. Cronenberg avoids turning this into a simple good versus bad plot. Instead, he focuses on the unsettling experience of discovering a part of yourself that is powerful but difficult to control. The film slowly reveals how scanners communicate, how they detect one another, and how their emotions influence their abilities. The famous scene that everyone references today is extreme by early 80s standards, but here we keep it safe while keeping the impact clear. Let us just say, the moment involves a demonstration of scanner power that leaves the entire room shocked and became an iconic image in cinema history. It showed audiences that practical effects could be both imaginative and startling without relying on anything unsafe. Scanners helped shape the future of sci-fi thrillers, inspiring later films, television series, and video games. It is extreme not because of content alone, but because of how boldly it uses sound, performance, and visual timing to create unforgettable tension. It remains a standout work in the genre. Number 7. The Stuff from 1985. There are strange sci-fi films, and then there's The Stuff, a movie that treats dessert like an invading force. The story begins with a white fluffy substance bubbling out of the ground. People try it, love it, and then the world can get enough of it. It is sold everywhere, marketed as the next big treat, and treated like a miracle product. But The Stuff does not just taste good, it does something far stranger. The movie works because it mixes satire with science fiction. On the surface, it is funny, colorful, and filled with sharp commentary about advertising culture. Beneath that, it hides a darker idea. What happens when a society welcomes something before understanding it? As more people enjoy the stuff, their personalities begin to shift. They move differently. They speak differently. They lose interest in anything that isn't more of the stuff. The visuals become increasingly wild. Rooms transform. People change before your eyes. The scenes use practical effects that ooze, stretch, and deliver the kind of 80s creativity fans still talk about today. The film never tries to be scary. Instead, it leans into a playful but eerie tone that makes every moment unpredictable. The The stuff is extreme in the most entertaining way. It's just weird, clever, and full of surprises. And its final message feels surprisingly modern. Maybe the most unusual invaders are the ones people welcome without question. Number 6. Contamination from 1980. Contamination proves that Italian filmmakers in the early 80s were fearless when it came to big ideas and bold visuals. The premise is simple but gripping. Strange, green, glowing pods arrive on Earth, and anyone who gets too close ends up facing consequences that escalate quickly. A small group of investigators tries to understand the origin of these pods, and the story leads them across continents into a conspiracy rooted in space exploration. The most memorable part of Contamination is the atmosphere. The directors create a world that feels slightly dim, slightly humid, and always on the edge of danger. Every room looks like something might pulse or move, and every hallway feels one step away from an unexpected surprise. The pods themselves are the center of the tension. They hum softly, they glow, they seem harmless until someone disturbs them, and then the film switches into full 80s spectacle. What makes this movie stand out is its dedication to in-camera effects. The filmmakers use practical materials to create reactions that feel messy, chaotic, and very real. Viewers at the time had never seen anything quite like it, which helped the movie gain an international cult following. Contamination is extreme, not because it tries to frighten you, but because it goes all in on its concept. It mixes science fiction, suspense, and old-school creature design into a high-energy thrill ride that still entertains fans of classic sci-fi oddities. Number 5. Metalstorm, The Destruction of Jared's Sin from 1983. Metalstorm is the definition of 80s sci-fi ambition. It takes place on a distant desert world where futuristic vehicles, glowing crystals, armored wanderers, and ancient technology collide. The plot follows Dogen, a determined explorer chasing the mysterious Jared Sin, a villain with a mystical device that threatens the planet's fragile balance. Everything about this movie feels larger than life, from the costumes to the lands, to the dramatic close-ups that stretch every moment for maximum impact. One thing that made Metalstorm unique at the time was its use of three-dimensional effects. The movie was designed for a full three-dimensional theatrical experience, which means the camera constantly pushes forward, objects fly toward the audience, and scenes are staged to give depth to every landscape. Even when viewed normally today, you can still feel that extra dimension shaping the action. The world building is what makes it extreme. The movie never stops adding new details. One moment, you are in a desert canyon with towering rock formations. The next moment, you're inside strange tunnels, meeting new tribes, or watching energy blasts light up the screen. The effects are practical, sometimes rough around the edges, but always creative. Metalstorm became a cult favorite not because of a deep story, but because of its sheer enthusiasm. It tries everything, shows everything, and pushes its universe as far as the budget will stretch. It sees 80s sci-fi excess in its purest form, and that exactly why people still revisit it. Number 4. Class of Nuke M-High from 1986. If there was one studio in the 80s that embraced chaos with confidence, it was Trauma, and Class of Nuke M-High is their sci-fi crown jewel. Set in a high school that sits right next to a chemical plant, the story begins with an unexpected leak that changes everything. Students start behaving strangely. Plants grow in places they shouldn't. Creatures emerge where none existed before. The school spirals into a whirl of unpredictable sci-fi mayhem. The movie leans fully into exaggerated humor, bright colors, and energetic performances. Every scene feels like it was designed to surprise the viewer. Characters enter and exit with dramatic flair. The hallways look like they were decorated for a parade that never ended. Even casual conversations carry a sense of over-the-top excitement. It is a world where normal rules don't apply, and the film loves reminding you of that. What makes it extreme is the steady buildup of unexpected twists. The effects team clearly had fun experimenting with puppetry, makeup, and clever camera tricks. Creatures pop out of lockers. Classrooms turn into chaotic battle zones. The school's final moments explode into full 80s spectacle that feels like a wild mix of science fiction, comedy, and cartoon energy. Class of Nuke M-High isn't trying to be serious. It's trying to be unforgettable. And for fans of playful, imaginative sci-fi from the era, It's a perfect example of how much creativity filmmakers could pack into one movie, even with limited resources. Number 3. Android from 1982. Android is one of the quietest but boldest sci-fi films of the early 80s. Instead of relying on giant sets or loud action, it builds its intensity through character, isolation, and the strange innocence of artificial life. The story takes place on a remote space station where a brilliant but reclusive scientist works on a long-term project. His assistant Max appears to be a young man learning about the world, but it quickly becomes clear he is not human. What makes Android extreme is the emotional tension beneath every scene. Max is curious, eager, and unsure of his place in the world. He watches old movies, studies human behavior, and dreams of experiencing life outside the station. When unexpected visitors crash land nearby, Max sees an opportunity, but their arrival brings danger, chaos, and revelations that shift the entire story. The movie uses its small budget creatively. The sets are simple but atmospheric, filled with blinking lights, quiet corridors, and unsettling shadows. The script pushes questions about identity and freedom, and many scenes feel slightly off, as if something important is always seconds away from being revealed. And when the story does break open, the twists are surprisingly bold for a sci-fi film of its size. Android may not have the explosive energy of other 80s movies on this list, but its ideas, tone, and final sequence make it unforgettable. It's extreme in a thoughtful way, exploring what it means to be alive in a world that fears its own creations. Number 2. Hardware from 1990. Hardware may have released in the early 90s, but everything about it is pure late 80s sci-fi intensity. Directed by Richard Stanley, the film blends cyberpunk energy with claustrophobic suspense, all set inside a cramped apartment filled with metal, neon lighting, strange art pieces, and humming machinery. The story begins when a scavenger finds robotic parts in a desert wasteland and sells them to a man named Moses Baxter. Moses brings the pieces home as a gift, unaware that the machine is not as lifeless as it seems. What follows is a slow burn that gradually builds into full chaos. The machine, known as MARK-13, reassembles itself piece by piece using whatever it can find. It upgrades, adapts, and learns. The apartment becomes both cage and battlefield as the machine begins exploring its surroundings, each movement accompanied by mechanical grinding and the buzzing of overheating metal. The confined setting heightens the tension. There is nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, and every corner feels like a trap. The film's visual style is its strongest feature. Stanley uses shadows, red lighting, and industrial sound design to create a world that feels unsafe even before the danger begins. It's messy, gritty, and filled with creative practical effects that make the unfolding events feel startlingly real. Hardware remains a cult classic because it captures the fear of technology evolving faster than humans can understand. It is extreme not from scale, but from mood, style, and the relentless feeling that something powerful is moving just outside the frame. Number 1. The Hidden from 1987. The Hidden opens at full speed and refuses to slow down. It is one of those sci-fi thrillers that throws you straight into the action, expecting you to hang on as the story unfolds. The film follows an ordinary detective named Tom Beck, whose quiet routine is shattered when a series of unexpected incidents begin happening across the city. The behavior of the people involved feels strange, almost as if someone is guiding them from within. That someone turns out to be an extraterrestrial presence that can move from person to person. Whenever it takes control, the host suddenly behaves with unstoppable energy. Cars race down streets at breakneck speed. Storefronts get torn apart during wild chases. People who were once calm become unpredictable, driven by something they cannot fight. Every time the presence changes bodies, the film resets the stakes, creating new dangers and new personalities for the audience to follow. The arrival of FBI agent Lloyd Gallagher adds another layer to the mystery. He knows more than he first admits, and the partnership between him and Detective Beck becomes the emotional anchor of the story. Their contrasting styles lead to sharp humor, tense debates, and some genuinely touching moments. The Hidden is extreme because of its pacing and creativity. It mixes sci-fi, action, and humor with such confidence that even its quiet scenes feel electric. The final reveal ties everything together in a way that still surprises new viewers. It is one of the most energetic and imaginative sci-fi films of the decade. The 80s were filled with sci-fi films that broke rules, stretched imaginations, and refused to play safe. These movies weren't afraid to be loud, weird, or wildly creative, and that is exactly why they're still talked about today. If any of these titles made you curious, check them out and see how far practical effects and bold storytelling can go. And before you leave, tell me which one you want a full breakdown on next. Your choice might shape the next video.